And hello everybody, and welcome to our workshop for today. We'll get started here in just a minute, but before we do, let's start you with a nice video about databases. Have you ever seen that one before? A little EDM about databases. So welcome, and we'll get started here real soon. And it'll be kicking here soon, Dave. And welcome everybody to our Cassandra certification workshop. I am David Jones-Gilardi, joined today by David Chung. Hello, David.
Hey, everybody. Welcome.
Welcome. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. All right, so let's take a look at our chats. And can I just get a thumbs up just to make sure the audio is okay? You can hear both of us just fine. All good. Great. Thank you for that. Alrighty. So first thing, without further ado, I want to do is to bring us into one of the tools we're going to use today, which is Menti.com. So we're going to use Menti for both asking you some initial questions, a little survey just to get to know you a little bit better. But then also later on, as we get into the certification workshop, we're going to be giving you a whole set of practice questions, a whole set of 20 practice questions. So we're going to use Menti as a way for you to answer those questions, right? So if you would, please go to Menti.com. The code is there on the screen. You see 60 57 66 2. We want to start there, and I will go ahead and drop this down. Thank you, Avanti. Thank you. Yes, thank you for letting me know, everyone. So it's Menti.com. Again, go to Menti.com. The code is 60 57 66 2. I feel like I'm giving out lottery numbers every time we do that. Thank you, Cedric. Cedric beat me to the number. Awesome. All right, and so once we do that, as you get in, please, yes, you're already doing it. Wonderful. You see those little thumbs up if you want to do the Batman, or if you want to do hearts, or, if you want to give some love or a thumbs up. It's all totally up to you. They're coming out of David's head right now is really what's going to happen here. Let me just go ahead and there we go. There. Excellent. And given how many folks we see in here, let's see if we can get this number up to like 40. Okay, it's growing pretty good. Because again, we're going to be doing most of the stuff we're going to be doing out of this Menti today. So I want to make sure that everybody's there and able to participate. Sit tight, David.
Thank you.
David, use the key I when you are in Menti. Cedric is trying to give me some information here. I'll have to find out what that's about. I'm afraid to use it, Cedric. I've never done it like that before. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our survey questions there. Just a couple things. First one here, how much experience do you have with Apache Cassandra? All right. Oh, we've got a veteran, or a couple of veterans, it looks like. But it looks like the majority of you, or you've either never used it before or less than a year. So the cool thing about that is that this session, the way it's designed, and we're going to, I know we jumped right into asking you questions, right? But we're going to explain what we're actually up to. I mean, the whole point of this session is to help you prepare to get your Apache Cassandra certification. So for those of you who have never used Cassandra before, some of these questions, some of the practice questions might be totally over your head. You've just never come across it. You've never used it. That's okay, right? Number one, this is just preparation. It is giving you an idea of what to expect. But two, we're here to answer your questions, right? So I see a lot of you are already in YouTube. We also have our Discord chat. We'll drop a link for that as well. So if you have questions, something's not clear, feel free to ask. so don't be shy from that standpoint. We will also point you to more resources later on at the end of today's session, so that you can get yourself trained up before you go into an exam. So a lot of the stuff that you might, especially if you've never used Cassandra before, a lot of the questions you might have from just starting off will be answered once you get into the resources. Okay, wonderful. Thank you everybody for that. I saw more than 5 years on there. That's awesome. Okay, the next one. Have you been to any one of our workshops before? I keep doing that today. Let's see. Cedric and Alex, that's great. You're going to have to tell me what that does later, the eye.
Well, it looks like we have some frequent flyers here.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, I should have a follow-up question that says, have you been to this workshop before? All right, well, hey, for those folks that the 30 I see on there said, yes, you've been to one of our workshops before. Hello. Hi there. And if you're not, if this is new to you, welcome. I'm glad that you've all decided to come today. And by the way, we don't have just this workshop. We actually have a workshop tomorrow that I'm going to tell you more about. We have like 3 workshops this week, and we have more coming up. So excellent. So welcome to everybody. And then how'd you hear about us? How did you hear about this workshop? Cedric, I like how you said, I never miss one. Cedric says he never misses one. That's wonderful. It's usually because you're giving them, Cedric. So I don't know if you count. All right, so we see a lot through Eventbrite, YouTube. I love how it runs the gamut, though. The Through of Friends, though, I think are our favorite. And for those of you who've been to one of these before, you've probably heard us say that, but we do enjoy that. If you do enjoy our content, if you think it's helpful and useful, that's why we do these, right? Definitely tell your friends. Let folks know. We really strive to present all of our material for free. Everything that we do, the resources, the workshops themselves, and everything. So again, hopefully they're a good resource for all of you. Okay, thank you for answering. And then last one for the survey: what motivates you to get certified? And by the way, we ask these questions and we do use this data. So we do like to know kind of what's in it for you. Why are you doing this? We use the data from these surveys to kind of tailor what we do in the future. So we really appreciate you answering these first initial questions. Yeah, better job opportunities. Well, I'll tell you, in particular with the certification, right? That is definitely something. One of the things that we see today is that Cassandra is a hot database. It has been for years, but there's actually a shortage in the amount of people who can administrate and know how to work with Cassandra, right? We see this actually in the industry a lot. It's one of the reasons why we do certification workshops like this. So this is definitely a great way to get you in that direction. Cassandra is cool. Woo! I like how it's like the second one. I'm okay with that. I'm required.
Yeah, that really ought to be the first one, David.
Right. Cassandra is cool. It really is. It's a really cool database. Yes, I want certification badges. People will notice. So the cool thing is once you take your exam, if you pass, you do in fact get something that you can then share up on LinkedIn and kind of brag about and everything, and then hence the bragging rights. Okay, wonderful. Thank you all so much for answering those. So with that, keep your Menti open because we are going to use that to go through all the practice questions and everything. So we will come back to that. Okay, so first thing then, where we are working out of. So this repo, I'm going to drop a repo here in the chats. And here we go. Okay, so here is the initial README, but you can get the repo out of it. I can actually just give you the repo as well. And I'm going to drop this in the chat. So this is the repo we're working out of. Now, different from some of our other workshops that are usually code-based workshops, this one is really more of kind of an instructional GitHub repo, right? There's no real code or anything in here. But what I really want to show you is just the kind of default layout. So the whole point of, again, not only this workshop, but the materials that we're going to provide you with today is to give you a one-stop shop where you can look and find what is it that you need. What do I need to do to get certified, right? What materials do I need? Where do I take the exam? All that kind of stuff. So what we've done is laid that out all for you here in this GitHub repo that I've just pasted or posted down into the YouTube and the Discord chats. So most of the information that I'm going to talk to and David's going to talk to today is here in this repository. Now, I'm not going to sit here and read through all this or whatever. That's for you to do on your own, but it is here. So this is a good place that you can go to do that. One thing I really want to show you, though, at the very, very, very bottom, I'm going to scroll down. He says, go to the practice questions. So all the questions that we are going to give you today are here in the GitHub repo. The reason why I'm pointing this out is we have seen in the past that for some folks, maybe for some reason, the video coming from YouTube isn't perfectly clear or something, they have a hard time reading something, well, you can just follow along right here in the GitHub repo. So for each of the questions, as we go through the practice questions, I'll call out the number. I'll say, okay, question 1, question 2, whatever, and that way you can follow along. The one thing I do ask, let's say you go to a question, the answer is here. We ask when you are taking the Menti quiz, the practice stuff along with us, don't look at the answer and just answer that, try to do it, right? Try to figure it out. But the answers are in fact here for the practice questions. So if you want to do this self-service on your own, you can totally do that. Okay, so that's pretty much it about the repo itself. Let me see questions wise, what do we have? Yes, thank you, David. Okay, yes, this workshop does cover both admin as well as dev. To be clear, the questions that we're going to give you today, the things that we're going to go through, are not the exact questions that are on the exam. That'd be a little funny, but they are. They should, the look and feel, the content, they're every bit as real as an exam question. They're just not the exact same questions. But the real key here is to kind of learn what to expect. Right? That's kind of the key thing, is what should I expect when I am taking the real exam? And that is what this whole workshop is designed, is kind of set you up so you kind of know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, David, every type and style of question that's on the real exam will be represented in these sample questions. So there should be no surprises.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, so as an overall agenda, right? First thing is I'm going to bring you through, which certifications. So there's multiple types of certifications, and then what resources do you need for those certifications? Then we'll go through the steps of the certification. What steps do you need to take to go through the whole process to get yourself certified? Then we're going to get into all of the different sections where we're going to go through, where you see sections 3, 4, and 5. We're going to step through. That's where the 20 practice questions are going to come in. And like David just said, right, all the different styles of questions that you could expect are there. But then we're going to get through some of the core material, core Cassandra materials, some admin, and then some data modeling. And then finally at the end, we're going to go over some resources. Now, in the resources section, these are going to be follow-on materials, things that, like the Academy materials, I'm going to give you a little demo of today, but we're going to have some special stuff for you. In particular, that hackathon, if you're not aware of it, I'm going to tell you about it, where you can win $10,000. That is coming up here soon. So I'd say stay tuned, and we'll have a bunch to show you there at the very end. There it goes. Okay, so first one, which certification should you get? So there are 2 certifications. There's either the administrator certification or there's the developer certification. To break it down, if you're wondering which one should I do or what's the difference, if you're planning to administrate, operate, install, or any way kind of, directly work with a Cassandra cluster, the administrator certification is probably for you. If, however, you are coding and you are intending to, say, interact with a Cassandra database, but you're not the one managing it, right? You're not operating it, but you want to learn, how do I work with Cassandra? How do I add it into my applications? The developer certification is probably for you. Now, you can do both. There's nothing stopping you, right? There's no one that says you have to do one or the other. It really depends on your particular needs. But again, it's really going to come down to, are you managing a Cassandra database or are you using a Cassandra database? That's really the difference between the two. So what resources do you have to get these? Okay, so if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, that is the GitHub repo that we are working off of now. Like I said, that's a resource that we threw up, so it's kind of a one-stop shop. Really, the place you should start, though, is at the very top. That's that datastacks.com/dev/certifications. That page, what's nice about it is not only will it kind of explain, some of the why and everything, it'll link you to the Academy resources that I'm going to show you here in a moment. But at the bottom, it actually has the exam rules, right? So something you really need to know about this exam, and I'm going to show all of this to you, is there are rules. There are things you need to do ahead of time. This is a proctored exam. That means somebody will literally watch you the whole time you are taking the exam. Right. So there are things that you need to do, like you can have only a single monitor. You can't have your phone, right there. You can't wear headphones. Something I learned myself, embarrassingly, make sure you've gone to the bathroom before you start your exam, because you will not be allowed to get up to leave your desk or leave wherever you're taking the exam. You have to finish it for the full thing. Right? So things like that you'll learn in the exam rules, and that /dev/certifications is going to tell you about those. Then there on the bottom right, you see academy.datastacks.com. That is where the training materials that you need for the exam exist. Now, something to just state out when it comes to Academy or any of the materials that we provide, they're all free. Everything is free. So we may ask you to register for something. Like if you've never been to Academy before, you'll need to register an account. But it's free. There's no hidden paywalls or anything like that. Let's see. What is a monitoring tool for Cassandra? Oh, okay, I see. Well, I'll get to some of those questions if they're not answered a little bit later. Okay, then moving on a little bit. On the left-hand side, you'll see a forum, community.datastacks.com. So that's like Stack Overflow for Cassandra, right? For all things Cassandra. The cool thing about it is there are Cassandra experts. There are people that are outside of DataStacks that are in the community that are on that forum. It is really the kind of place that you go if, let's say, you're working on a Cassandra database, or you run into some snag or some issue, or you've got an open-ended question. That's a really great place to go and ask, right? And there are folks from all around the world that can help answer those questions. And then when you ask those questions, you help other folks who might have the same question as well. On the right-hand side, you see that bit.ly/Cassandra-workshop. That goes to our Discord channel. So we have a Discord channel, the Fellowship of the Cassandra Rings, channel in Discord that, matter of fact, we're live on right now, along with YouTube. Here's the big difference. You can chat with us all day in YouTube, and that's perfectly fine. But when we stop this stream today, that communication ends. So if you want to be able to communicate with us essentially 24/7 or, persist that relationship, then go to the Discord channel, right? There's about 7,000 other folks in the Cassandra community that are in that Discord channel. So there's other people there who might be able to answer questions or whatever. So if you want to ask questions, you want to interact with us, Discord is really the place to go. Oh, thank you. Yes, and I see that Alex is dropping links and everything. Wonderful. Okay, so looking at the steps then, the steps for certification. You've chosen your path. You're going to do admin or dev or maybe both. What steps do you need? So the first one, like I mentioned, go to /dev/certifications. If you do nothing else on that page, go down and read the exam rules and process section. As I mentioned before, the exams are in fact proctored. It's really important that you read these beforehand so you're not surprised before you start taking your test. Right? So just make sure you go through those. You will find, and I'm going to show you here in a demo, that as you prepare to take the test, some of the items that you need to do, you won't be able to start the test until you've done them. So you're going to have to go through that process anyway, but better to be prepared and know what to expect up front before you go to take the test, and you might be surprised by something. One other thing about the exams is you can take them at any time. You don't need to schedule them. You can literally just say, start the test, and somebody is going to show up, and you will be able to take the test whenever. Okay, so in Academy, and I'm going to show you that in a moment, you can choose, there's multiple learning paths. You'll see the admin learning path if you want to do the admin certification, or the developer learning path if you want to do the developer certification. Both of these learning paths will give you all of the knowledge and materials you need to pass your exam. Right? So if you have any questions about what stuff do I need, it's here in these learning paths. That's exactly what they were designed for. If you haven't already, go to DataStacks Academy. Let me go ahead and bring this over right here. I'll drop this link. This is for Academy. There you go. Go to academy.datastacks.com and register. And that way, once you're registered, you're going to see all the same stuff I'm going to show you. Then, based on that learning path, whatever learning path you've chosen, you want to complete all the course material within Academy for that learning path. So for the admin learning path, you want to use DS201 and DS210. For the developer learning path, you want to use DS201 and DS220. So you notice in both of them, they both have DS201. Those are the core fundamental Cassandra, materials. So if you're brand new to Cassandra, right, you've never done this before, absolutely take DS201. DS210 is more on the admin ops path, right? That's specifically for people who are looking to administer and operate a Cassandra database. DS220 is data modeling, which is really important for those developers and folks that are looking to use and interact with the database. And then the last thing, once you go through one of those learning paths, or I'm going to give you another path here in a second, you can actually claim an exam voucher. Why is this important? The tests themselves without a voucher are $145 per chance, right? However, what we're telling you here today is that you either complete one of the learning paths, so either the admin or developer learning path. Once you've done that and you show them all complete, you'll see in Academy, it'll actually check off everything you've done. Once you've completed the learning path, you can email academy@datastax.com, let them know that you've completed the learning path, use the same email that you register to Academy with, and they'll give you a voucher. That voucher will give you two attempts to take one of the exams. So you could use that however you want. You could use that to say you want to take the developer exam. Let's say you take it and you pass. Guess what? You have an attempt left. You can actually apply that to the admin exam if you'd like. Or if for some reason you don't pass, you get another attempt. So any one voucher is good for 2 attempts. Now that's one way that you can get a voucher. Another way that you can get a voucher is to go into Astra. So DataStax Astra is it essentially is Cassandra in the cloud, right? It's a Cassandra managed service in the cloud. And we have a free tier in there and everything. So you can go to Astra and you can create a database. Now, Jack is going to drop a form today that in that form at the end, you can fill that form in. And if you also pass in a DB ID, a database ID, that from Astra, that is another way to get a voucher. This workshop here, this link that you see for this workshop, this CRUD with Python and Node workshop, is one of the other workshops that we provide. In it is a set of instructions that will quickly get you up on Astra on how to create a database. The key thing, though, about this workshop and why we provided it here as kind of like a suggested route to create a database is because it explores an IoT use case, uses a lot of CRUD, and it gets into the driver. So for you developer course folks, it might be really useful for you because it actually really hits on a lot of the same material that you're going to want for the exam. Am I telling you to go to that workshop and you'll get everything you need for the exam there? No. I'm saying it is a good supplemental resource and it will get you setting up an Astra DB. So 2 paths, either finish a learning path in Academy and then email academy@datastax.com, or create a database in Astra and then in the form, pass your DB ID. The form has instructions on how to get that DB ID and use the email. You want to use the email that you register to Eventbrite, right? Either one of those will get you a free voucher for 2 attempts. All right, let me stop just for a second and take a look. Do we have any questions or anything, David, that we need to follow up on here? And David, you got really quiet. Did I lose David? No. All right, let's see. I'm just seeing, do we have... All right, looks like you guys are all over it.
Yeah, we're caught up in questions, I think.
Wonderful. Excellent. All right, moving on. All right, then the final step is take your exam, right? Take your exam. The full details, again, are going to be in the GitHub repo that we gave you, and now I'm going to give you a little bit of a walkthrough on how to do this. All right. Okay, so I've already got my Academy up. This is what your page looks like when after you register, you've logged into Academy. This is similar to what it's going to look like. What I want to point out down here in the catalog is the admin path and the developer learning path. These are those learning paths I was referring to when I said you pick one, you click on it, and you go through the materials. So let's say I want to go through the developer path. what this will do is present me with a whole set of the different courses that I need to take. You can enroll in these, right? And then if I go into, say, DS201 here, you'll see that within the course itself, I have all of this course material to go through, and it'll track your progress and all that. You'll see that there are a mix of videos, there are quizzes, all sorts of things. Now, especially if you're brand new to Cassandra, and especially if you want the voucher and you're going to take the learning pathway of doing it, you really need to complete all the materials here. But especially if you're new, you should really go through all the videos that are in here. It's going to cover all the stuff that could possibly be in the exam. And it's also very important that you take these quizzes. You'll see these quizzes that are in here, right? These quizzes are really going to hit on the various types of questions and such that you're going to be tested on. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with the materials in the videos, and that you're comfortable with passing the quizzes. If you can, regularly pass these quizzes and you feel good about that, you're pretty much good for the exam. Now, something else I want to point out, on the very right-hand side, you see this resources in here, right? You see this lab work, there's a VM and everything. If you want to go deeper, if you want to go a lot deeper, actually, right, we really suggest taking a look at the exercises. Now, you don't technically need them for your exam. But if you really want to get a deeper knowledge, they're really good. They will. It's one thing when you watch us on a video, kind of explaining concepts and everything. You take the quiz, it's great. It's a whole nother thing when you get your hands dirty and you do it for yourself. It really just kind of sinks it in, right? So there are VMs that are here. If you are though on a machine that maybe is lower resource, or you're limited bandwidth and you don't want to have to download, I think it's like a 3 gigabyte VM or something. We do have another resource for you, which is in Catacoda. Let me bring that up here real quick. I'll drop this link as well. But all this stuff that I'm talking about is all in these slides. The slides are in the repo. So if I go back over here, if you go to the root, you'll find in the repository itself slides. In the presentation, everything, all of the links and everything that we're talking about are there. Okay, here's the Catacoda. Let me drop that for you as well. I'll put that in both. There's that. This Catacoda is good if you just want to get your hands dirty a little bit a different way. What's cool about Catacoda, if you've not used it before, is it's a fully cloud-based online system. So if you have a lower resource system, or if you're limited on bandwidth or something like that, instead of downloading that VM, you can just go to Catacoda. It'll actually spin up a Cassandra instance or instances for you up in the cloud, and you can just do this stuff through your browser. Right, so it's kind of nice from that standpoint. But the one that I just dropped, the Cassandra Intro, pretty much hits on all the stuff you're going to find in the Academy course. So really, it depends on what you're looking to do. Okay,
and
so
David,
yeah, go ahead.
Another resource along that line, and the one we used in developing the exams to verify that the questions really were worked the way we designed them, was Astra. It allowed us to spin up an instance in the cloud and run CQL statements against it, do data modeling and that. So we have a lot of resources available to you, and these resources are all free of charge.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so once you've gotten into the course content, go through the course content, get comfortable, complete all the stuff for your particular learning path. Then once you've completed one of those, like I said, once that all goes green and you've completed it, right, then that's when you can send an email over to academy@datastacks.com with the same email you used to register to get a voucher. I just saw a question about a voucher. Admin, there's 2 ways that you can get a voucher. One is completing a learning path here in Academy, either the admin or developer one. Once you've completed the materials, and by the way, all of this is in the GitHub repo, all of it, right? So once you've completed one of these, then you send an email to academy@datastacks.com, or we'll drop a form today at the end of the workshop. In that form, what you have to do is create an Astra database, and you provide your database ID, you pass that in, that's another way to get a voucher. Okay, so let's pretend now, for a moment, you've taken one of the learning paths, you've gone through all the material, you're ready to take your exam. What do? Notice the DataStax certification course that is here in Academy. So if I go into that, you have a set of resources here. Now, the first thing is I've already, you have to sign up, right? It uses a system called Metal. Again, that's all free and all of that. Now, I've already signed up, so I'm just going to go ahead and log in. I'll come back to that in a second. So notice here the review the exam rules. Let me blow this up. It looks like a little small. Let's see if we can make it a little more readable. There we go. Notice the review the exam rules. I'm going to open that up and check your computer for compatibility and install Google Chrome extension. So there's two things you need to do here. One, remember those exam rules I was talking about? Things like have a small mirror, right? Because you need a way that the proctor can see around your area, your work area, right? Only one screen, no additional monitors, right? This is what I was talking about. It's really important that you read these so you know what to expect, so you're not surprised when you go to take your exam. The other part is verifying your system settings. So there's a little widget. I've already got the extension installed, but there's a little widget you install, and it's going to test your system to make sure that it is up to snuff, essentially, for the exam. One of those is not having more than one monitor, right? Because the proctor will actually be able to see your screen, and they can't do it if you have two screens. So now I have a multi-screen setup when I do this kind of stuff. So that's why it's complaining, saying, hey, you've got a secondary screen, you can't do that. So what would I have to do? I'd have to remove it, and then it'll let me know that I can go on. So you'll need to run that widget. And what'll happen is this. When you actually come to the point where you're ready to take your test, you're gonna see something like this. This is after I've logged into Metal. And if you notice here, for any of the tests, I have this little check, right? This is the same thing as this verify system settings. And by the way, notice that if I haven't done this, it's not going to let me take the test. There's no button here to take the test. I have to verify those system settings first, and I have to pay, and then a little button will show up saying, hey, you're good to go. As far as the voucher goes, you don't see a button for a voucher. What you do is you click on Make Payment. When you say Make Payment, you put in your voucher. This is where you put your voucher in, right? Once you put your voucher in and apply that, then it'll waive the $145 fee. And as long as you've done that and you have gone through and taking, the system verification check, you'll get a button here that allows you to start the test. Okay. The voucher, I want to say, Jack, if you could, I think we're doing 3 months rolling now, right? So is it 3 months from now? I'll have Jack, AJ, I'll have Jack confirm. I believe it is 3 months for the vouchers. Correct. Okay, so it's 3 months rolling. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Jack. Okay, so then last thing about this part here, right? Notice this Apache Cassandra sample test. There are 20 questions in here. Those 20 questions are the same 20 questions we're just about to go through, right? So we're giving you multiple paths. You can use the GitHub repo. You can use the Metal test here to do a sample test, or you can follow along today. Totally up to you. Now, again, the sample questions are not going to be the real questions, but they are every bit as real, and they match the style of what you're going to find. So again, you know what to expect. And then that's it. Once you're ready and you hit Start Test, you'll have 90 minutes. By the way, it gives you all of this information here. You can see, oh, okay, I got 60 questions. It's 90 minutes long. So what's going to happen is you're going to get a total of 90 minutes for all 60 questions. You can take as long as you want on any individual question. You're not going to be timed on individual questions or anything like that. Now, one difference today is we are going to gate how long we let you answer today to 2 minutes per question, just because we don't have that. It's harder for us in this kind of format during a workshop to ensure that we finish on time, right? So we're going to gate everything to 2 minutes today. They're just practice questions. But in the real test, you'll have as much time as you need for any particular question. Once you have completed your exam, you will find out if you've passed or failed. You will, in fact, get results that you can take a look at. And if you pass, you'll get a certificate and you'll get verification that you have, in fact, passed. The question we get a lot is, will my certification expire? No, the certification doesn't expire. Now, to note, this is for Cassandra 3, right? Cassandra 4 is on its way, coming very, very soon to be released into GA. And David, I believe you guys are already working on the materials for the Cassandra 4 exam. Is that right?
We do have a few things working for that, but yes, Cassandra 4 exam should follow Cassandra 4 GA. I'm not going to promise a date, but
yeah, it's coming though. Yeah, but the key thing
coming
is
soon.
Once Cassandra 4 hits and the Cassandra 4 exam comes out, that will not invalidate your Cassandra 3 certification. That will still be valid forever. I see a question in here. How do you pass 70%? You need 70%, Miguel, sorry, and others in order to pass. Now, the way we set up the practice questions for you today We have 20 questions, and we're kind of just given a gut check. If you get 14 of them correct, that's that 70% mark, right? Kind of gives, like I said, it just kind of gives you a gut check. Let's see what else do we have here. Before, when can we claim the free voucher? I see Sazi, and what's the deadline? So again, you can claim. Yes, if there is a glitch in the internet, it will resume. That's actually in the exam rules. You will see that they do cover that. And Sazi, yeah. So you claim the voucher, I believe, Jack. I think you're going to have that form. How long are you going to leave the form up, Jack? Can you let us know? But as far as the form, well, let's see what Jack says. But then you can do the learning path whenever. And then once you're done with that learning path, you email academy@datastacks.com. Once you get your voucher, your clock starts for 3 months. Let's see. Okay, there you go. So Jack has got it. Yeah, if you look at what Jack just said, I think that should answer some of the questions. Alrighty, so with that, why don't we get into some of the questions? I think we've got the current questions answered. Are y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's do this. All right, so I'm going to move. Now, this is where we want to go back to Menti. So let's go back to Menti. And let's just get a little bit of quiz music going here. All right, and if you go to Menti with me, and let me know you're in there. Give us a thumbs up, right? So let us know that you're in the Menti with us before I move on, because I don't want to get too ahead of everybody. Okay, I see we have 27. You guys can't see the number because it's coming out of David's head. Got 35. Now we have a lot more of you on here, so I'll give you a moment. Now, something while everybody is kind of getting into Menti and we're doing that, something I'd like to point out is these questions, there's going to be a leaderboard in here. The leaderboard isn't meant to be in here as a competition between each other, right? That's something we usually use in Menti to actually have that very competition, but for today, we're just giving you an idea of where you are points-wise. So the way we set this up is each question will be worth 1,000 points, right? And there are 20 of them. So it's just really for you to be able to kind of see how you're doing as you go along. It's not really meant as a competition, but Menti has the leaderboard is the only way I can really count things up. All right, let's go ahead and move on. All right, we should see, I'll let everybody come in here and then I will start the first question. So what we'll do is I'm going to put a question like this up on the screen, just like you see here. I will go ahead and start the question or start the quiz. You'll see a countdown. There it goes. And then we'll read the question. You go ahead and answer. Choose one of the options that shows up where you have Menti, and then we'll go from there. So here's the first one. So consider the CQL statements that you see here. So the create table statement and these insert statements. And at the end, how many rows will the roller coasters table have after executing all of the CQL statements? Yeah, you won't see the question in Menti. Menti doesn't have the ability to put in long-form questions like this, so that's why we're going to show them to you in a slide. Again, if you need to, you can follow along in the GitHub repository with question number 1. All right, let's see. So it looks like the questions or the answers are in. The correct answer in this case was C. Looks like most of you got that, but a lot didn't. So we're going to explain it. So at this point, at the next portion, this is where David is now going to explain the why, right? Why was the answer here C? Go for it, Dave.
Yeah, and in this process, especially because there are a lot of beginners in this session, we're going to go through the thinking about why, how we go about solving this. So looking at this, says consider the SQL statements. I'm going to look at the create table statement, and what I'm going to look at first is the primary key. And in this case, the primary key is a single field name. That double parentheses means that the name field is the primary key. It's single field. So now I have 4 inserts. So the first one we insert, and the key that's being inserted, the name is Millennium Force. The second one we do an insert, and the primary key value being inserted is Formula Rasa. Then we do a third roller coaster, and the value for the primary key is Steel Dragon 2000. Then the fourth insert is really the key here. We do an insert, and the primary key value, the value of name, is Millennium Force. That's the same value as the first insert. And unlike a relational database, in a relational database, if you try to insert 2 rows with the same primary key, you're going to get a key collision and a failure. In Cassandra, when you do an insert with the same primary key, it causes an upsert. We call it an upsert. It's like an update, and therefore only 3 rows are created. The fourth insert changes the value for the Millennium Force row to Cedar 7 from Cedar Point and 8. So because of the upsert in the fourth insert statement, we have 3 rows in this table. The correct answer is C.
Alrighty. Excellent. So hopefully it gives you an idea of kind of the format, what we're going to do. So I'll present the question first, then everyone will answer, and then David is going to kind of explain the why behind a particular question. All right, so the next one here, number 2, let me go ahead and move on to number 2. You should see a countdown. There it goes. There we go. Okay, so consider the CQL statements here. Again, the create table statement and these insert statements. And what is the result of executing all of the CQL statements? Yeah, I am noticing some folks that are having a hard time with the stream. If you are, give me a thumbs up in the YouTube or Discord chats, because if enough people are, then I'll switch to a different provider. Okay, so the correct answer here was D. So it looks like we did have a spread, but most of you got it, right? So why don't we go ahead and take a look at why?
All right, so if we look at this question, once again, I'm going to look at the create table statement, and I'm going to look at the primary key. The primary key consists of two fields, artist and title, but you'll notice both fields are inside the double parentheses. So artist and title are the partition key. Someone had asked in the chat about a tool to automatically convert from a relational database to Cassandra. You really can't do that because it's a different way of looking at data, and we're going to be looking at, in this case, partitions. The question is, what's the result of executing the SQL statements and the CQL statements? And it's really how many partitions are created. So the partition key is artist and title, both fields. The first insert, the artist, the Beatles, the title is yesterday. The second insert, the artist, the Beatles, the title is Let It Be. Those are different partitions. Even though the artist is the same, the titles are different, and the artist and title together make up the partition key. Next, we have another insert. These are great 70s songs. That's ABBA and Fernando, and that is yet another partition. So we have 1, 2, 3 partitions. And the fourth one, and I'll bet you didn't know that Frank Sinatra covered Yesterday. Actually, almost every artist has, but Frank Sinatra and Yesterday, and that is yet another partition because it's a unique combination of artist and title. So each insert creates a new row in a separate partition. The answer is D, 4 partitions.
Alrighty, excellent. Thank you, David. All right, and thanks for the thumbs up in there. It looks like the connection, the YouTube piece has stabilized, so I'll keep it from now, but I do have something in my pocket just in case. It doesn't for some reason. All right, moving on to the next question for now. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, we should be on question 3. So consider this CQL statement here, and then which of the following is a valid query for the cars table? Guess my keyboard's loud. Sorry, Sean. Yes, I am totally doing answers in Morse code. Totally.
David, actually, you have the loudest keyboard on the planet.
That's my typing. That's from years of doing things in Unix, especially VI. All right, so the correct answer in this case was in fact C. Looks like most of you got that right. Why don't we take a look at why?
Okay, well, let's take a look at this one again. And once again, we're going to look at the primary key. The primary key here has 4 fields in it now: make, model, year, and color. And if you'll look at that primary key, the first 2 fields, make and model, are in the inner parentheses. Those are the partition key. So the rows are going to be grouped into partitions based on common make and model. And then the clustering columns are year and color in that order, and order matters for clustering columns. So which of the following is a valid query? Well, the first query can't be valid because one of the rules is, the pattern is, we're going to try to limit queries to a single partition, or to use a phrase, a countably small number of partitions, using an in clause perhaps. So the first one doesn't narrow down to a single partition or a small number of partitions, so that query is invalid. The second one doesn't use any of the fields of the partition key, so that query is invalid, because that query would require searching all over the disk and across multiple nodes as well, searching the whole database, really. The third query and the fourth query, C and D, are the ones we need to look at. Both of them use make and model. So both fields of the partition key, they both narrow to a single partition. But within a partition, rows are ordered by the clustering columns, and in this case, by year first, then color. That's the way the data is stored physically in the mem table, or excuse me, on disk. So in order to, and keep this in mind when you're thinking about how things work in Cassandra, Cassandra is designed for high performance at scale. So in order to provide the highest performance at scale, Cassandra requires you, if you use any of the clustering columns, it requires you to fix the first one before the second one, because they're grouped by year first, then by color. So D is not a valid query because it's looking for Ford Mustangs by color, and that query would require you to skip around within a partition on the disk. Whereas the query C, select from cars where make is Ford, model is Mustang, and year is 1969, this will pull up contiguous rows from the underlying SS tables. So performance at speed, performance at scale, keep that in mind. Most of the things about Cassandra come back to that.
Yes, exactly.
So C is the correct answer.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, David. All right, moving on to question number 4. So if you're following along in GitHub or somewhere else, it's question number 4 is where we're at. Oh, I should probably bring up the leaderboard. Here we go. So again, this leaderboard, by the way, this is not to compare against each other. So really, that comes up on the screen, but really look at your phone or wherever doing the Menti. You're going to see the number of points you have. We've done 3 questions, so if you've gotten them all, you should have 3,000 points at this point. All right, so then moving on to question number 4. Go ahead and start that one up. Here we go. All right, so consider the CQL statements here, the create table statements and batch. What is a valid statement about this batch statement? All right, let's see. The answers come in. There we go. Now, in this case, the correct answer was C. We have a little bit of a spread on this one. This one could be tricky, right? This is one of those that could be a little tricky. So let's find out. Why is it C?
All right, so let's take a look at this. First off, once again, in answer to the question about automatically converting from a relational database to Cassandra, if you come from relational world, as many of us do, these create table statements are going to look odd because they contain exactly the same data, the same fields. And in a relational database, we would never do this. In Cassandra, we do this sort of thing quite often. Why do we do it? We do it because we have different primary keys that will allow for different searches. One table would allow searches by ID, employee ID, the other searches by department, and then sorted by ID within a department. So we have this batch. This batch has two inserts, and it says insert into employees table, and we have an ID, a name, Joe, and legal, and insert into the other table the same data, same ID, same name, and legal. And the question is, what's true about this batch? The batch consisting of those two inserts. It's not a single partition batch. This one's pretty easy when you start thinking about it, because it's talking about different tables. A partition belongs to a table. So A and B can't be the correct answer because it's not a single partition batch, it's multiple tables. So C or D has to be correct. It's a multi-partition batch, and the question is, can it be applied? Now, if you don't know what that means, it means, is there anything preventing these two statements from being done? And the answer here is no. They provide the primary key. That's a requirement for an insert. There's nothing else going on here that would be legal. So it is a multi-partition batch that in fact can be applied, and the correct answer is C. The use case for a batch in this use case is to keep data in denormalized tables, to make sure we get the same data in denormalized tables.
Okay. Now, and by the way, Daniel asked a fun question over on YouTube. So inserts don't have to follow the primary key order. Yeah. So it, is, if you notice, when you are executing the insert statement, right, it's not about so much the primary key order, it's about the order of the columns in the statement itself. So notice the columns here where I say, okay, I'm going to insert into, and I'm specifying ID, name, and department. As long as I'm matching those in my values, then I should be good, right? It's going to know which one is which. Later on, though, when you are selecting data, right, then what you're doing with regard to the where clause, that does in fact matter with your partition key and such. Yeah, as far as the insert statement goes, you should be able to put those in whatever order.
Yeah, as long as they match the column names in the list.
All right, so question number 5. And we should see that change in our Mentee. And get a countdown. There it goes. All right, so consider the table definition with a primary key omitted. And here you'll find, you want to read these. Definitely pay attention to what's being said in the bullets. So what primary key does this table have? Okay, looks like our results are in. So the correct answer here was B, and the vast majority of you got that correct. Good job. Let's take a look at why.
All right, so let's take a look at this table. In this case, the previous questions, I always looked at the primary key first. Here we're being asked, what should the primary key be based on these facts? And wow, it looks like the majority of you got this correct. So restaurant reviews are uniquely identified by a combination name, city, and reviewer. The primary key has to consist of those fields because the primary key uniquely identifies a row just like it does in relational world. Now, the second bullet here, restaurant reviews are retrieved from the table using there should be an A in there, using a combination of name and city. So what that tells me is that either name and city make up the partition key, or name could be the partition key and city could be the first clustering column, but I don't see any answers that have that. Or city could be the partition key and name could be the first clustering column. I don't see any choices that fit that requirement either, but those would work. So among the choices we have, the only one that would allow a query using a combination of only the name and city field is B, which would query on the partition identified by name and city. And if you did a query select where name equals and city equals, it would return potentially multiple rows because the clustering column reviewer means there could be multiple rows in that partition. So as the majority of you answered correctly, the correct answer is B. Doesn't sound like some of you have never seen Cassandra before, because a lot of you are getting these questions right.
Yeah, right? I noticed that too. Maybe people are just really insightful and sharp, maybe. I don't know. Could be.
That's it. I'm sure that's it.
All right, so going on to question number 6. We're going to keep this on a nice little clip. You should see the countdown there. So if you consider the table definition and the CQL query that you see here, which materialized view definition can be used to support the query? This is one of those that if you don't know it now, you'll never get it wrong after you have this question. All right, looks like our answers are all in. Whoa, look at the spread on that one, David. Yeah, this one, if we were to retake a similar question after you answer this, I think we'd see all of them get the correct answer after they understand how to do this. But yes, it was D is the correct answer. Let's take a look at why.
Okay, so if we look at this, oh yeah, the answers are all over the board there. But the majority still got the correct answer. I'm not sure that there are that many beginners in this in this workshop. So let's look at the table. The table has a simple primary key single column, and it's the name column. We're using the different syntax for it. And we want to do a select from teams by wins where wins equals 4. We couldn't do this select from the teams table because wins is not a partition key column, and it's not part of the primary key either. So we're going to create a materialized view. A materialized view, you can think of it as like creating another table, if you will, and it's to support this query where we want to look at all the different teams that have 4 wins, 5 wins, whatever the value is. So the first two choices, A and B, the primary key in the first one, in A, is name and wins. Name is the partition key, but the query is where wins equals 4. So name can't be the partition key. Wins has to be the partition key. So that leaves choice B as a possibility and choice D, because they both have wins as a partition key. And what it comes down to, as David said, once you see this, it makes sense. D is the correct answer because what this is going to do, as I said, is essentially create a new table, and the fields of the primary key cannot be null in a table. So if we're going to create a table from the existing table where wins could be null in the teams table, we have to validate that wins is not null and that name is not null, though name won't be null in this case. But that's a requirement. We do have to verify that the primary key fields aren't null. So D is, and it makes sense. So D is the correct answer.
Yeah, and I see some follow-up questions here. Mohammed asked, can materialized views be used in production? Now, Alex has already given some of the nuance to this, right? There are some success stories with materialized views. There are some failures with it. They are considered experimental. Here's the key thing. Materialized views fit a certain sweet spot, right? They are not something that you just want to use everywhere. As David kind of talked about before, Cassandra is purpose-built to be able to maintain its performance at scale. And one of the ways it achieves this is by using a denormalized data pattern, data model. So you'll notice that as you start to data model in Cassandra, or if you've already done that, right, instead of having, say, what you would expect with like third normal forms and such from relational databases, we actually denormalize. So to have multiple tables that are going to support individual queries. Sometimes, though, where materialized views tend to come into play is, let's say I have one particular table that supports a query, but I need a different view on that same data, or I need a different primary key. One way you could achieve doing that is by using a materialized view to create a different key on that same table. But here's where it comes down to whether or not you actually want to think about using them. Anytime you deviate away from using that denormalized data model pattern where I have multiple tables for like a one query per table kind of thing, then you're starting to deviate away from being able to maintain your performance at scale. So Cassandra, when I say performance at scale, what do I mean? I'm talking about being able to maintain single digit, 2-digit milli response times on reads in a database that's anywhere, from a handful of nodes to thousands of nodes, right? In Cassandra, there's a lot of ways that it maintains this, but to be able to do that and guarantee that, you need a denormalized data pattern. So now, funny enough, underneath the hood, if you use a materialized view, you're actually creating another table. It's actually doing it for you, but now there's a little bit of overhead because it has to maintain, when a query comes in, right now it has to maintain both of these. So there could be a little bit of lag between them and stuff. So the question is, are they used for production? It really depends on your use case. It depends on the kind of SLAs that you have. I don't know, David, if there's anything else you want to add to that, but again, it's listed as experimental. There are successes. There are ways you can do it, but there are also ways you can abuse them.
Right. In fact, we had some discussion about whether to include this on the certification exams because, it's one of those where there's sort of special use cases where you may want to use them, but use with caution.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's take a look. The next, let's see, our leaderboard. Again, this is more about the total amount. We've had 6 questions. So if you've gotten them all right, about 6,000 points is where we'll be at. And let's go to the next question. All right. So we should be at question 7 if you're following along in the GitHub repository. Question 7, don't ignore that. I fat fingered a key. Consider the table definition and the CQL query here and which secondary index can be used to support the query. Much like the last one, if you get this wrong, you'll never get it wrong again, because it's one of those things that once you learn it, you know it. All right, and our answers are in. Let's see what happened. Oh, we see a really good spread on this one as well. Again, though, if you were one of the ones who did not get A, we're going to explain it just like we are with every one of these. But once you get this once, you'll understand. This is one you can't get wrong once you know it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, the answers are all over the place.
Yeah, they ranged on that one.
Okay. And the correct answer, as we said, is A. If you take a look at the initial table, it has a primary key of city and name. City is the partition key. Keep in mind that would support queries by city. Select from restaurants where city is Sydney, and by city and name. Select restaurants where city is Sydney and name is Sushi House. But the query we want is to select by city and cuisine. Secondary indexes do not create a new table. They're different from materialized views in that way. What they do is they add another index. It's almost like adding another or an alternate clustering column. And note I said an alternate clustering column, not multiple alternate clustering columns. So what we really do is we're going to, the primary key, the partition key is still city, but it's as if we were making cuisine the first clustering column to allow this this particular query. So A is the correct answer, and the reason you know is a secondary index really just adds a single column as if it were the only clustering column. So you can do queries on the partition key plus this secondary index column, and it only allows you to do one. So A is the only one that calls out a single column, but that would support the query shown. So the correct answer is A.
Alrighty. Thank you, David. All right, going on to question 8. Which statement describes the where clause in a query? This is one of those key things, by the way, when we go to review it. This is one of those key things about understanding Cassandra and how Cassandra works. Again, this is actually similar to the last couple, that just in this theme of once you understand this once, you'll be good. But we'll of course explain it. All right, and our answers are in. Let's see, the correct answer here was A. Let's take a look at why.
All right, so if we take a look at this, which statement describes a where clause in a query? The where clause must reference all the fields of the partition key. That's the only requirement, because the pattern we're going to prefer for queries, as I've said before, is to limit queries either to a single partition or to a countably small number of partitions, perhaps using an in clause. So now you can have the partition key and the clustering key, all the fields, the primary key. So yeah, all of these could be in a where clause, but the must means that only A is correct, all the fields of the partition key. And again, it's to support performance at scale.
All right, going on to question number 9. We should see our countdown here. All right, so consider the 2 CQL statements you see on the left. Which insert statement can be used to insert a row in the people table? Oh, and don't give your answers in the chat, please. Not calling anybody else. Calling anybody out. Maybe, not. Oh, here, I'll give you that Menti code. Oh, looks like Alex beat me to it. Thanks, Alex. All right, and the results are in. The correct answer here was, in fact, A. Let's take a look at why. This one's another easy one that once you know it, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and this is simply a syntax question.
Yep.
We're talking about user-defined types. Notice we're creating a type called name and using it in the people table. Just a note in user-defined types are created in and scoped to a key space, just like a table is. So the real question here is, what is the syntax for passing in the values of a user-defined type? And it really comes down to that. Do you know the syntax or not? The syntax is JSON. So A is the correct answer. And having seen that once, if you remember UDTs and JSON with inserts, you'll recognize that is in fact the correct syntax. But this one's strictly a memory question.
All right, and taking a look at the leaderboard again, we are just tailing up where you are. We've had another 3 questions or so. So if you've gotten them all right so far, I see Nikhil and Alex have gotten them all right so far. You should have 9,000 points. And again, we put this up here just as a gut check, just to kind of get an idea. Once we get through the whole set of 20, then if you've got 14,000 points, right, you got 14 of them correct, then you would have technically passed the practice exam, if you will. Okay, moving on to question 10. Let's go ahead and start that one up. There we go. All right, so consider the CQL statements here. What is the result of executing these CQL statements? Something I want to point out. Definitely take care to notice the field types and any modifiers. Definitely pay a lot of attention to that create table statement.
And that's really good advice when you're taking the real exam.
Yes, yes, it is. All right, looks like the answers are in. And the correct answer here was B. B, so let's take a look at why. This one, again, is another, it's a little tricky, honestly, and I was pointing something, I was kind of trying to make you look at that static that Dave is just about to talk about. But once you understand what that does and how it changes things, then I think you'll be in a good place.
Yeah, so it looks like there's a pretty good spread on the answers. So let's look at the table, emails by user, and picture this table, in real life. I'm David, and I have a work email address, a home email address. I may have other email addresses, and each one will have a label or a description along with it, but they all belong to me. I'm a particular user. So the primary key here, consists of two fields, the partition key, which is the username, and email, which is a clustering column. So right away, that tells me that there could be multi-row partitions here. So I look at the inserts. The first insert, the partition key is DC1234, and the email address, which is the clustering column, is david@datastacks.com. Second insert, same partition key, so we know it's in the same partition, but the email address, which is the clustering column, is different. So what that tells me right away is that there are two rows in this partition. So right away I can rule out choices C and D because those only return a single row. So there are two rows. Then I do an update emails by user, set nickname equals Davy, description equals school, where username is DC1234 and email is david@gmail.com. So I look at these two, david@gmail.com should be set to Davy and school. Well, that's true for both A and B. But as David said, by the way, neither of us go by Davy. As the other David said, the nickname column is static. So changing the nickname for the david@gmail.com row changed it for the entire partition. So the correct answer here is B, the nickname, because the nickname is static. In fact, if you were to look at it, I'd encourage you to use SS Table Dump and take a look at what an SS table or SS tables look like for a Cassandra database, what you'll find is that within the partition, that nickname field is stored exactly once. And again, performance at scale is what drives this. But the key to this question was the static modifier. And do be careful when you take the real exam, you'll see things like this pop up, and you'll just want to make sure they're not necessarily hard, and they're really not meant to be tricky, but you do have to be careful.
All right, thank you, David. Now, I do see Daniel ask the question, can I have pen and paper at the exam? I want to say that's no. Do you know that one for sure, David?
I thought it was no also.
Yeah, because, you know, I'll tell you, the proctors take their job very seriously. Anecdotal story, I'm one of those people that I tend to think out loud, and I talk to myself as I'm working through questions. I was told to stop doing that because the idea is you could be speaking loudly enough that somebody in another room could be hearing you or something and giving you answers. So they're pretty strict, actually. They'll let you know, though. They'll let you know if there's something they don't like. They'll let you know. But I believe that's no. I don't think you can have pen and paper.
David, my proctor story is even better.
Oh, what you got?
You see that I'm drinking from a Diet Pepsi here.
Yeah.
I was told I could only be drinking water.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't allowed to drink at all. I guess they don't want to have any modifying drinks. I wasn't sure what that one was, but yeah. So yeah, just be prepared. Go to the bathroom. Make sure you eat. Like, make sure you're all good to go before you start. All right, moving on to number 11. Here we go. All right, so now you notice that we're moving into something a little bit different than what we've done before, where we have these architecture diagrams here, where we're looking at a cluster in some data centers, right? So you want to consider both these data centers in the diagram, and what's a valid statement about a read request made a consistency level of local quorum to a coordinator node Z in the Paris DC. All right, and our results are in. Let's see how everyone did. Oh, wow. Look at that. The vast majority of everyone got that one correct. Good job. The answer is B. Let's take a look.
Awesome. So if we look at this, right away you see that we have two data centers. Replication factor is set per data center. It happens to be the same for both. Each data center, Tokyo DC has 2 failed nodes. Paris DC has 1 failed node. The question is about a read request made at consistency level of local quorum. Quorum means majority. So a majority of replicas would have to respond. Local quorum means a majority of replicas within the data center where the request is made have to respond. So we're making the request to the coordinator node Z or Z. So we make the request there. That means we're in the Paris data center. The replication factor is 3. Since node W has failed, 1 node has failed, the worst case is that W is one of the replicas for the particular data we're looking for, which means that the one replica has failed, but two replicas are still up. Or in the best case, the data we're looking for is not on node W, in which case there are three replicas available within the Paris data center. Either way, a minimum of two or possibly three replicas in the Paris data center will be able to respond to the request. 2 of 3 makes a quorum. And since this is local, we only have to worry about the Paris data center. So the request will be handled in the data center Paris DC and will succeed. B is the correct answer.
Alrighty, okay, moving on. Thank you, David, to question 12. Here we go. All right, so consider the CQL's traces here. Now, in the actual exam, you may need to scroll, so something to be aware of, that you may need to scroll to see the whole thing. At what elapsed time is the data persisted so that will survive an unexpected node shutdown? All right, let's see. And the answers are in. Let's see how everybody did. Good job. Yes, the correct answer was in fact C.
All right, very good. This comes down to understanding how data is written in Cassandra, what we call the write path. So if you look at the output at the CQL trace, we execute the query, we parse, we prepare the statement, determine the replicas, and then append to the commit log. The whole purpose of the commit log is to provide an on-disk record of activity, we'll call it. And then after the commit log, it gets put into the mem table. The mem table is not persistent. If the system shuts down, the mem table is lost. It's the commit log that persists it until the data and the mem table is flushed and the data is written to the SS tables. But the commit log allows us to have persistence. That's the whole purpose of it. So C is the correct answer.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, David. Yeah, this is actually, by the way, the commit log is one of my, I think one of the coolest, or one of the more neat features of Cassandra, right? It is purpose built not only to be able to perform at scale, but since it's a distributed database, right, it needs to be robust, because what happens, well, any database really, but I mean, what happens if like a node goes down or something? And this is one of those robustness mechanisms. It's actually really cool. For those who are interested to get a little deeper here, when you go through the Academy materials or in Katacoda, you find the information on the right path. It'll talk about this in particular, and you'll get to kind of experience some of that coolness and how this adds to the robustness of Cassandra. Okay, question 13. Let's go ahead and get that timer going. All right, so how is replication factor configured in Cassandra? All right, let's see. We've got our answers in. The correct answer here was, in fact, B.
Yeah, so the correct answer, as we said, is B. And we alluded to this in a previous question. Replication factor is configured per key space. And if you've used Cassandra and created a key space, you'd know this, because you are required to configure replication factor and strategy when you create a key space. So the answer is B. This was another one that is really a memorization question.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah. Once you do this one once, then you know, okay, it's always per key space, right? All right, let's take a look at our leaderboard real quick. And again, the leaderboard is just to give you a tally of where we are. If you've gotten them all correct up until this point, we should be at 13,000 points. And we're getting real close here. All right, excellent. So let's move on. Now those were all the DS201 base ones, right? So those are the ones that are the same regardless if you do the admin path or the dev path. Now we're gonna do just a couple for the admin path, and then we're gonna move into the data modeling piece. All right, so looking at question 14, let's start this one up for you. There we go. Okay, what are two options for internode encryption in Cassandra? Now, something to point out. In Menti, we cannot allow two options. It just doesn't have that. So you're only allowed to choose one. In the real exam, if you see something like this, it means choose two options, right? And in Metal and in the real exam, you'll be able to choose two. So the way we're doing this is if you get either one of the two correct, we'll give it to you, obviously. But just note that in the real exam, if you see something like this, you do need to choose two. All right, looks like we have our answers, and a little spread on this one. Yeah, this one should, because there are two correct answers. The correct answers are C and E here. Let's take a look at why.
All right, one note about the form of this question. You'll never be asked on our exams, choose all correct. If it's more than one answer, we'll tell you how many answers. In fact, we'll prompt you twice. In this one, we say, what two options for internode, or what are two options for internode encryption in Cassandra? Choose two. So you get prompted twice. What this is talking about is encryption between individual nodes. So client doesn't make sense. That's not encryption between nodes. Node might mean encrypt between nodes. Rack is a choice. Rack means encrypt between nodes on different racks. Enabled is not a choice. DC means encrypt communications between nodes across or in different data centers. And the reason is the four possible choices, there are only four, it's a memorization question, are all, none, DC, and rack. So DC and rack are the two choices. Just to note, a rack is a subset of a data center. So a rack is a logical grouping that's a subset of a data center, which in turn is a logical grouping of Cassandra nodes, typically corresponding to a physical availability zone or something like that. So correct answers are C and E.
All right, thank you, David. Moving on to question 15. All right, which configuration file is used to set garbage collection properties for Cassandra? Okay, answers are in. Let's take a look. Correct answer here is B. Oops. Whoa. That was hold on. Sorry. Give me a moment as I totally had a moment there at the keyboard. My bad. Don't mind me. Ignore what's going on in your Menti for a moment. Sorry. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, and most everyone a large number got this right. Which configuration files use set garbage collection properties for Cassandra? Cassandra YAML isn't a bad guess. Yeah. Because quite a bit of the configuration for Cassandra goes into Cassandra.yaml. But the JVM options file is where JVM specific stuff goes, like configuration of memory, garbage collection, that sort of stuff. All the JVM Java specific stuff, as opposed to Cassandra stuff, is designed to go into that JVM options file. That makes it easier to handle that in one piece and pull it out rather than having to search the larger Cassandra.yaml file. So again, this is a memorization question. The correct answer is JVM options.
All right, and by the way, if you didn't vote in time, if you're seeing that in your Menti, that was because of what I fat fingered there a moment ago. I will reset that. Don't worry about it. As you might be able to tell, we have a couple things going on at the same time in the background here, and my hand decided to do something very strange. So, all right. So, question 16 should be starting or not. Uh-oh, looks like Menti got confused. Give me just a second here. Well, for some reason, I cannot get Menti to go back to question 16. So why don't we go ahead? I'll just give you 2 minutes. Don't worry about the Menti here for question 16. And then we'll continue on. So go ahead and just try to answer this one on your own. And I will set a timer. All right, about a minute left on this one. Yeah, you're right, Helen. You're not going to see the options on this one. Just go ahead and do it on your own. I fat fingered that last question and something happened in Menti, so I'm going to try to fix it with the next. I'm doing a timer on my end. Yes, that's correct, Helen. Yeah, that was my bad. I'll fix it as we move forward. Okay. All right, so time up for that one. I'll go ahead and show the answer, and David could give his thing, and I'll try to fix Menti.
Okay, the correct answer for this one is B. What are the current values for this row? If you look at this table, there are 3 fields: the primary key, a test, which is a text field, and a score. There are 3 things shown here: a mem table, that's an in-memory table, an SS table, actually 2 SS tables. First thing you notice is that we see the same primary key, which is a single field ID, and it's 11. Tells me these are all referring to the same row. Now, very important thing to understand about Cassandra. In Cassandra, latest wins. The most recent update, or the most recent insert wins. So if we look at this, we know that the ID is 11, because that's true in all three of these places. We'll look at the value for test. Well, the mem table doesn't have a value for test, so we'll look at the two SS tables. The value for test in the first one is math, and the second one is English, but latest wins, so we look at the timestamps. The top SS table, the timestamp starts with 120. The bottom one starts with 118. So the top table is the newest, so the value is math. Then we look at the score. The SS tables have 48, 62, and the mem table has 75. The mem table is always going to be, or almost always going to be, the newest. So that's the newest value. So B is the correct value, 11, math, and 75. Somebody had asked a question about how this stuff is stored. The process of compaction could eventually combine these SS tables, so we wouldn't look across multiples, and the mem table could eventually be flushed into an SS table, not the existing ones because they're immutable, but into a new SS table as well. But the correct answer here, based on timestamps, is B. One other important note, there are questions on the exam that have to do with timestamp. Mm-hmm. We will make sure on the exam that the timestamp differs in the first few digits. So you don't have to read down to the 8th or 9th digit to figure out, is this timestamp different from this one? You know, like these are 139, 120, 118. Pretty easy to tell, 3 digits, that these are in fact different times.
All righty. Thank you, David. All right, moving on to question 17. Now, as I start the timer, I'm just going to make it, we are going to go just a couple minutes over. We shouldn't be too bad today at all. So if you would stick with us, we only have a couple questions left, and then we do have resources, and I definitely want to talk to you about the hackathon, because there's a big old prize for that one. But anyway, with that, what is a valid statement about a coordinator node handling a query at consistency level 3?
Hey, David, maybe you and I should get together and join the hackathon for that $10,000 prize.
Yeah, right. Actually, we can't win it.
Oh, darn.
No, yeah, DataStax employees, we can't. We can win other ones. We can't win that one.
I was so excited about that.
Yeah, right.
Thanks a lot, buddy.
Sorry, deflated you. Sorry. Okay, looks like our answers are in. And the correct answer here was, in fact, D. This is one of those that, regardless if it's, replication factor of, or consistency level, of 3, or quorum, or local quorum, you'll find that the answer will be much the same.
And what drives this answer, again, is performance at scale.
Yep.
The consistency level for, we're talking about a query about a read. We don't send a direct read request to all replicas. We don't send a direct read request to 3 replicas. The read repair is kind of there as a distractor. What really happens is the coordinator needs to get the data, so it asks a single replica. In fact, it asks the fastest replica. the one that it's had the fastest responses from before, for the data. And then it sends a digest request, requesting just a digest of the data, sort of like a checksum of the data, from 2 other replicas to satisfy the consistency level, in this case 3. So it gets back, excuse me, gets back the data, which could be large, from the fastest replica or closest replica, and gets back 2 digests from 2 other replicas. And then it compares, it creates a digest of the data that's received, and then it compares the 3 digests. If they match, the coordinator knows it has the current data, the most recent data from those replicas, and sends it back, all's good. If it doesn't match, that's where we're worried about read repairs and figuring out which replica had the latest timestamp and asking the latest timestamp for the data if it wasn't the one that sent the data via direct read the first time, because once again, latest wins. But a picture isn't a read. We're only going to ask for all the data, which could be large, from a single replica, and digest from the others to satisfy the consistency level, because again, performance at scale.
Alrighty. All right, moving on to question 18. We have 2 left, and we're going to look at... There we go. Not the solution. I don't mean to give you the solution. And you should see a countdown almost with us. All right, so what is a valid statement about a write made at a consistency level local quorum against a key space with a replication factor of 3? Okay, and our answers are in. The correct answer here was, in fact, C. It looks like the vast majority of you got that. Great.
Yeah, excellent. Because local quorum is the consistency level, but the responsibility of the coordinator node is to attempt to write to the replication factor. So it's going to write to all nodes, regardless of the replication factor. I mean, all nodes up to the replication factor, 3 in this case. But as soon as a local quorum acknowledges the write, so it's going to try to write to 3 nodes because the replication factor 3, that's all nodes. As soon as 2 nodes acknowledge the write, we're good. And it's going to say, it's going to send back an ACK to the client. So the correct answer is C.
Excellent, thank you. All right, let's take a look at the leaderboard. At this point, if you've gotten them all correct, then you should be at 18,000. Now, if you've at least got 14,000 or 14 of them correct at this point, you would have technically, you already have your 70%, right? You'd already pass. But again, it's just a gut check, not a comparison. Now, moving over into the data modeling piece, the practice here, we're going to have two different types of practice for the data modeling. Let's go ahead and start that one up. There we go. So consider the Chabacco diagram that captures the physical data model for investment portfolio data. If you're not familiar with the Chabacco diagram, that's one of the things you will find in the DS220 course. It is a way that in Cassandra we use to help data model, right? I'll give you a little hint. K means partition key, C means clustering column. In this case, what is the primary key and clustering order of the trades, table trades by ASD? Okay, it looks like we have our answers. And the correct answer here is D. Looks like the most majority of you got that correct. Good. Let's take a look at why.
All right, so the symbology in the Chabacco diagram, as David said, the K stands for partition key fields, and the C stands for clustering columns. This is, excuse me, this is the physical data model, so it includes the data types and even the ordering of the clustering columns. You see the symbol column is ascending, the trade ID column is descending, and the order of clustering columns always matters. So what I know for sure is the primary key is going to be account, symbol, and trade ID in that order. So that would make C and D the two possible choices. Next, the default order for clustering columns is ascending order, but trade ID is in descending order. So C puts trade ID in descending order. D does as well, but D also specifies ascending order for symbol, which happens to be the default. But the rule here is like the rule was in the query and way back in the question about cars, Ford Mustangs, if you remember correctly, or if you remember that, we said that if you constrain a clustering column, you have to start with the first one in order from the left. So C can't be the answer because I've set the order, the clustering order by for trade ID, but it's not the first clustering column. So I have, if I'm going to set the clustering order by for trade ID, I also have to set it for symbol, in which case D is the only possible answer.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, when it comes to clustering columns, that ordering does matter. All right, last one. Let's do this. For everyone that's with us, you're right there at the very, very end. All right, so consider the application and workflow diagram for an investment portfolio application and which access patterns are evaluated before an application can evaluate Q3 sub 2. All right, and the results are in. Let's take a look. And this one, the correct answer is A. So let's see what happened here. This one's kind of tricky. It's another one that once you understand this flow, you'll be like, oh, okay, you won't get that one wrong again.
Yeah, so in this one, it really comes down to understanding how Chabot code diagrams work. And we're talking about an application workflow diagram. Again, in data modeling, this is crucial because our pattern is often going to be table per query, very much different from what we have in relational world. So the question is, what access patterns are evaluated before an application can evaluate pattern 3.2? Well, the entry point into this series of queries is Q1. And the diagram shows Q1 as being the predecessor or prerequisite for Q2 and Q3. Q2 is not a prerequisite for Q3. They are peers. So you could go Q1 or Q1, Q2 or Q1, Q3. But here's the trick. Q3 is actually made up of Q3.1, Q3.2 through Q3.5. There is no Q3, if you will. It's all of these Q3.1 through 3.5. So in order to do Q3.2, the only prerequisite is Q1. If you're a developer, think of Q3 sort of as an abstract query, whereas the concrete queries are Q3.1, Q3.2, and so on. So the correct answer here is A, and again, that's how Chabot diagrams work. But these last two questions on data modeling, just as a note, they are from DS220,
yeah,
but they are part of the developer course, not the admin course.
That's right.
Or developer certification, not the admin certification.
And if there's any question that you've come across here today, right, that you're just totally like, I don't get that or whatever, again, all of the materials, all of the things that you're going to need for the exam are in fact in those Academy courses and the supplemental Catacoda stuff. So to understand, by the way, we're going to offer, we have both resources. The Academy courses, those learning paths are like the guaranteed paths, right? If you're going to do the admin or the developer path, you take those Academy courses, you have the materials. The Catacoda courses, again, are really awesome for cases where maybe you have a lower resource system, maybe you have lower limited bandwidth. If you're looking to download the VM or something in the exercises for the Academy stuff, and they will spin up the exercises and all of the teachings and such online, but you don't get the videos. But they're really awesome actually. So there's just multiple options depending on your particular need. All of 201, DS201 is covered in Catacoda. Some of DS220, it's a matter of fact, the Catacoda data modeling courses, which we have some links on here at the end, bring you into some really neat data modeling use cases, right? You could look into an IoT use case or maybe a catalog use case or something like that. All stuff very useful before taking the exam. But again, they're all meant to be, supplemental material for you. But the Academy courses are definitely the ones that you wanna take a look at for the quizzes in the videos. Okay, so let's take a look at our leaderboard. Actually, let me go back to that leaderboard so we can see it. Now, again, at this point, you finished all the questions. So a passing grade of our practice exam, right, would be 14,000 to give you that 70%. So if you've got that or above, then wonderful. You would have effectively passed, right? That would have been a passing grade. If not, that's okay. That's why we're doing a practice exam, right? That's why we're doing this very thing. So this just, again, gives you kind of a gut check for where you might be. But we always strongly encourage you to go through the materials and definitely practice before you take the real exam. Now, before we finish up, just a couple more minutes. I got a couple things I want to tell you about. One is we are doing our Cloud Native series. It's a 3-week series that we actually started last week. The next one's tomorrow, right? That is the Connecting Cassandra and Kubernetes. So if you're somebody who is working with Kubernetes and you're wondering, well, how do I work with Cassandra and Kubernetes? That's a good workshop to take a look at. That will be tomorrow and Thursday. And then next week, we have deploying your Kubernetes apps to the cloud. So this is where we're taking an application, deploying it to Kubernetes and GKE and Google Cloud with Cassandra, right? So again, if you're interested in any one of these, totally check them out. That link down there at the bottom, as a matter of fact, oh, thank you, Jack. Jack, could you put that in Discord as well, please? Jack already posted the link. You just go to those and register. So we hope to see you there. Now, I alluded to this way in the beginning, right? But DataStax right now has our holiday hackathon. It is still going on, and you can still make submissions till January 18th. Now, here's the key thing, and David talked about this a little earlier. The first prize is $10,000. That's kind of cool, right? 10 grand is I would like 10 grand. Now, and there are all sorts of other prizes that are in there. They're all well worth your time. So definitely take a look at datastaxastra.hackerearth.com. And thank you, Jack, Jack is on top of those links and putting them in the Discord. Yes, $10,000 is the first prize. And the site will list all the other prizes so you get an idea. So we definitely want you to go take a look at that. Again, it's the 18th is the last day for submission. Now, I did mention more learning, right? So a great resource, again, is datastax.com/dev. And if you go there, you pick like a developer path or whatever, it'll actually bring you to some of the same Katacoda scenarios that I'm pointing you to here directly. But it does all of the training with Cassandra and stuff like right there in your browser. It's just embedded in the browser and it'll spin up resources for you as you go. It's pretty slick. But if you want, notice the Cassandra fundamentals and the data modeling courses. That's what I was referring to. You can go directly to those. If you just simply go to katacoda.com/datastax, that will bring you to all of the stuff. There's things there with Apache Pulsar, there's Kubernetes, all sorts of things, all free. And then it's all being done online in the cloud for you. And then, as I mentioned before, there's always community.datastax.com. So if you have like a longer form question, you're curious about something, you're not sure about something in any of the stuff we've talked about today, go to community and ask it there. And that's a great place to get some answers for things. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Twitter, LinkedIn. Feel free to connect to any of us. I am always happy if you hit me up on LinkedIn or something like that and you've got questions, or if you want to hit me up on Discord. Always happy to hear from you and happy to help. So come reach out however you need, and we will help connect you to the resources that you may need. And last but not least, why don't you go back over to our friend Menti, and we're just looking for your frank input. We want you to be honest. There we go. No, there we go, like that. Yes, we do take any of the feedback that you all have and your experience here, and we use that to evolve our content, right? Hopefully for those of you who've been with us before, you've seen that happen over time. So by all means, if you have something to say, please say it. Nothing. could be null. Make that null. Null in there. Let's see. Oh, yeah, let's see. So Mikey, thank you for the question. Mikey in Discord says, what about that form where you can get a voucher if you have a DB in Astra? Hey, Jack, can you drop the form, please? Yes, as a matter of fact, when Cassandra 4.0 hits, right, we will definitely have training. We're going to have that stuff for Cassandra 4.0. That's something we're definitely going to do moving forward. And Jack, there it is. And Jack, if you could put that in the Discord as well. So Jack is dropping a form right now. Thank you, Jack. That you go to that form and you either, if you have an Astra DB, wonderful, go ahead and fill it out. But you can either create one or, again, go to those learning paths. Like I said, either way, right? Up to you. Once you've done that, then you can get your voucher. And again, that's good for 2 tries for your exam. Provide the sample test link at the end of the course. Oh, yeah, totally. So, yeah, we can do that. Here, I'll do that. So the sample test link is here. It's in Metal, right? So where you get to Metal, where you're going to get to that is in Academy, right? Unless, David Chung, you correct me and you tell me there's a different way to do it. I believe that they could probably go to it directly, but they're going to need to go through Academy anyway. So what I will suggest is, here is the link to Academy. And here you go for whoever mentioned that. Okay. And you go into Academy. Once you're in Academy, if you go to the DataStax certification piece, once you've signed up for Metal, it just takes a moment. You'll be presented with a screen like this. This is where the sample test is that you can take. So once you get into the Metal interface, you will have that. All right. And by the way, last thing, once you take your exam, right, and you pass and you get your cert, let us know. Yell about it on LinkedIn, right? We love to see that. And we like to share those things out and everything as well. So make sure that you're letting us in the world know that you have gotten your certification. All right, and with that, thank you everybody so much. We really appreciate you being with us today. Again, if you have any follow-up questions, anything else that you need, hit us up in Discord, hit us up on social media, reach out, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. And with that, everyone, David, take care. Happy testing. And as always, don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notifications for all of our future upcoming workshops.
Imagine a being gifted with powers from the goddess of Cassandra, who grew those powers until she could multiply at will, move with limitless speed, and unmask hidden knowledge. With those powers, she was able to fully understand the connectedness of the world. What she saw was a world in need of understanding. From that day forward, she sought to bestow her powers on all who came into contact with her, empowering them to achieve wondrous feats.